The African origin of writing. We've been told a lie, and that lie was that African people have never had writing. We've been told a lie that African people have only got everything in their history, their culture, their civilization, everything from the outside. But is this true? When we look at writing, we find out that it's not true. It's a myth that Africans lack literacy. Africans usually base their writing systems on the ancient Thinite script, used by African people before the founding of ancient Egypt. Thinite was written and used by the Proto-Saharans. It's interesting to note that many of the African writing systems have always been maintained in East and West African secret societies. These writing systems were maintained in the secret societies because of the fact that it was felt that writing was a commodity that had to be used in a way that it represented the spiritual attitudes of people. And at the same time, it was a way to keep people in the process of communicating. The Thinite origin of writing in Africa is evident when we compare Vai and Thamudic. The Vai script is a writing system used by the Mandi-speaking people. The symbols related to Vai was used to write the Libico-Berber inscriptions and signposts located on chariot routes from the Fezzan to the Niger Valley. The Thamudic writing system, on the other hand, was used in Ethiopia and Arabia. This writing was used to record Semitic languages. So let's look at this. The Vai script was used to record a Niger-Congo language. The Thamudic, on the other hand, was used to record a Semitic language. But the interesting fact about this is that these writing systems, both of them have symbols and signs that have the same meaning and the same sound. What does this mean? It means that these writing systems had to have come from a central source, and this central source was the Thinite script. The Thinite script is a very powerful script. When you look at the pottery symbols on many of the various writing systems used throughout the ancient world, in ancient Egypt, and ancient Minoa, you'll find in a sense that all of these writing systems are almost identical. They're identical because of the fact that they were created by the same people. And these people, in a sense, had a source for their writing system. And this source was Thinite. Over the years, I've done many papers and done research on the various writing systems in Africa. What I'm going to do now is, in this video, we're going to discuss these writing systems, and we're going to, in a sense, try to see that African literacy, or the ability to write, has been around a long time among Africans. It's not nothing new. It's only new to those people who didn't do the research. So sit back and enjoy the following video. Thank you.
The origin of writing in Africa. Africa has a long history of writing. Although Africa has a long history of writing, many people believe that Africans have never had writing except in Egypt. Since the rise of worldwide Western European supremacy, it has been argued that Africans, due to a strong oral tradition, failed to invent writing. As a result, opposition to Afrocentrism has been the unfounded belief that only Egypt had writing in Africa. Although it is alleged that Africans were always illiterate, archaeological, historical, and epigraphic evidence indicates that Africans invented many writing systems and that these writing systems were used from ancient times all the way up to the present. The original inhabitants of the Sahara were the Egyptian or Kemetic people. These Egyptians, these Kemetic people, they were not Berbers or Indo-Europeans, because in fact the Sahara was the ancient homeland of the Dravidians, Egyptians, Sumerians, Niger Kordofanian, Mandi, and Elamite speakers. This area in ancient times was called the Fertile African Crescent. The inhabitants of this area lived in the highland regions of the Fezzan in modern Libya and Hagar until after 4000 BC. We call these people the Proto-Saharans. The genetic name for these people were Cushites. The Proto-Saharans were called Taseti and Tehenu by the Egyptians. In the archaeological literature, they were called A group and C group, respectively. These people left many inscriptions on pottery, and they later took these pottery signs and made them into a syllabic script. If you compare the symbols from the Indus Valley, Egyptian, Demotic, Mertatech, Gibel Sheikh, you find that all of these symbols are related. The Proto-Saharans or Kushites used similar terms for writing. In general, the term for writing was formed by the labial stops p and b. For example, the Dravidian word to write was par. The Manding word to write was bo, pu, or sebe. In Elamite, the word to write men was tipu. In Gale was tafa. There are also other corresponding terms for mark or draw that begin with the vowel stops. For example, the Dravidians called to write or draw kiri or kuru. The Egyptians called it hati, and the Manding called it kiri or kiti. The Proto-Saharan writing was first used to write characters on pottery, to give the ceramics a talismanic quality. Similar signs appear on Chinese, Harappan, South Indian, megalithic, Libyan, and Cretan pottery. These signs were invented by the Proto-Saharans for purposes of communication. If you look at this chart, you can clearly see that the signs from the megalithic pottery, the Indus script, Egyptian pottery, Manding script, and even the Anatolian script are all similar. They are similar because the Kushites took these scripts with them to these various areas. This is one of the earliest inscriptions from Egypt. These seals were discovered at Abydos by Gunther Dreyer. They date back to 3400 BC. These inscriptions were found at Abydos. Abydos is a very interesting site because it's at Abydos that we find many ancient artifacts and also find a number of inscriptions. These inscriptions are important because these inscriptions tell us a story about the Proto-Saharans. It tells us a story about ancient Africans, and it shows us much about their writing. Here's some inscriptions that were found at the pre-dynastic ruler Scorpion I's tomb. Some of these seals inscriptions date back to 3400 BC. Many of the pottery scripts that we have are called today Thinite. These inscriptions that are called Thinite come from a city named this near Abydos. The Thinite Empire dates back to 3150 to 2700 BC. The Thinite pottery marks are very interesting because you will find that the Thinite pottery marks appear in just about every one of the ancient writing systems. That is, the Proto-Elamite, Proto-Sumerian, Libico-Berber, Indus Valley. You'll find Thinite signs. The Thinite pot marks have been found in Upper and Lower Egypt. Petra was the first to record the Egyptian pot marks. These pot marks are found on pottery dated to dynasty 0 to 1. The Thinite pot marks were published by Van de Breen. They agree almost totally with the Ued Mertutek, the Gibel Sheikh Suleiman, Harappan, Proto-Elamite, Saabian, and Proto-Sumerian signs. It is clear that a common system of record keeping was used by people in the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, from Saharan Africa to Iran, China, and Indus Valley. Although the Elamites and Sumerians abandoned the Proto-Elamite writing and the Uruk script, respectively, in favor of cuneiform writing, the Dravidians, Minoans, and Manding continued to use the Proto-Saharan script throughout their civilizations. Here you can see a chart where we compare the various syllabic signs of the Egyptians, Uruk, which was the name for the Proto-Sumerian script, Proto-Elamite, Indus Valley, Ued Mertutek, Linear A, and Manding. Look carefully and you will note that they are all the same. They are very similar. The ancient African inscriptions make it clear that outside Egypt, Africans preferred to use syllabic writing, as indicated by the Thinite inscriptions, and Ued Mertutek and Gibel Sheikh Suleiman inscriptions. This fact is also made clear by the Seth inscription. The Seth inscription is an inscription that was found in the Western Sahara. This inscription has pictures of the Egyptian gods Seth and Anubis. The symbols on the engravings are written in the so-called Libico-Berber writing, which is really made up of Mandi signs. Using the Vi signs, we are able to read the inscriptions in the Malinki Bambara language. The reason we use the Vi to read these symbols is because the Vi record the ancient syllabic meanings for many of the signs that we find on the ancient writings. Under the canine figure or Anubis, we have Betuakana, or to exist obedient to the order in joy with the mother. Reading the inscriptions under the seat figure, we have the following: Ilui Gyo, Fa Yo Gyo, or Thou hold upright this divinity of the cult, our Father, the vital spirit of society consecrated to Seath's cult. The Seath figure is important in relation to the Western Sahara and the Seath cult. Michael Rice in Egypt's Making, The Origin of Ancient Egypt, 5000 to 2000 BC, makes it clear that Seth was the god of the southern people and that Anubis, the Canine god, was the protector of the people of the south. This is the end of part 1. The Origin of Writing in Middle Africa, part 2. The Kustel incense burner is also an example of the syllabic writing scripts that were derived from the Thinite pottery signs. Many Egyptologists were shocked to learn in 1979 that the A group of Nubia at Kustal used Egyptian-type writing 200 years before the Egyptians. The fact that they had already began to use many of the symbols that later became the Egyptian writings shocked the world. But this was not new, because Anta Diop had already noticed many years earlier that possibly all of the hieroglyphic signs of the Egyptian writing had probably originated in Nubia. The Kusu site was situated in a country called Tasseti. The name Tasseti means land of the bow. Tasseti was the name given to Nubia by the Egyptians. The Kustal incense burner indicates that the unification of Nubia preceded that of Egypt. The Tasseti had a rich culture at Kustal. Kustal Cemetery El had tombs that equaled or exceeded the Kemetic tombs of the first dynasty of Egypt. On the stone incense burner from Kustal, we find a palace facade, a crowned king sitting on a throne in a boat with a royal standard placed before the king, and hovering above him, the falcon god Horus. The white crown on this Kustal king was later worn by the rulers of Upper Egypt. Another important inscription comes from Gebel Sheikh Suleiman. Gebel Sheikh Suleiman is also located in Nubia. These scholars who have examined the document usually only talk about the pictorial representations on the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman monument. But the Gebel Sheikh monument has much more. From left to right on this relief, we see a falcon on a sirak sign surmounting a house or a palace. In front of this village or palace scene, we see a prisoner bound by the stitch bow. The stitch bow was the sign for the stew. We can read these Proto-Saharan inscriptions that are on the boat. The translation is as follows: Thou family habitation, hold it upright. Faye's estate is on the shores of the watercourse. Cut thou sepulchre, habitation for the family here. Faye preferred to be obedient to the order. Lay low the celebrity in the large hemisphere tomb, and offer up libations that merit upright virtue. Pure righteousness is King Faye. This being King Faye of Gebel Sheikh Suleiman may relate to Pharaoh Pehor, the throne of Horus, since in African languages F and P are often interchangeable. It is interesting to note that there is an inscription on a storage jar from Cemetery El at Kustal, Nubia, that reads Pehor. This Pehor may be the Faye of the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription. Another inscription that's related to this period comes from Oued Mertetek. The Oued Mertetek inscription was found in Western Sahara. This inscription was found on the lower level of the Mertek site and dates to over 3000 BC by Wilson. This is one of the examples of the Libico-Berber writing. This inscription is very important because it also gives us an example of one of the earliest gods with the horns that we find from this Western Saharan period. These inscriptions, as I've said earlier, were not only used during the Thinite period or the Libico-Berber period, we also find that these inscriptions and signs continued on into the Chariot Age, or 1200 BC. Here we have a picture of a Mandi inscription, including chariots and writing right above the chariots. The earliest civilizations on the Horn of Africa and in southwest Arabia dates back to the 2nd millennium BC. This culture is called the Tahama culture. It originated in Africa. The Tahama culture probably originated in Nubia. It is characterized by the cheesecake or pillbox burial monuments which extend from Darfur in Nubia all the way to the sites of Maine and Tahama in Saudi Arabia. Here we have megalithic monuments from Tahama, and it was a very extensive site that shows considerable length of habitation by the people. Ethiopia has a long history of civilizations and empires beginning with Punt. They also had a highly developed system of government led by kings and queens like the rest of Africa, as indicated by the statues from Hualti. The Ethiopians ruled in Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia. Queen Makeda had a residence near Axum, but the main capital of Arwe was located along the southern end of the Arabian shores of the Red Sea in a district called Asabi, or Saba, which meant in the Tigrina language of the time, the southern lands. The first writing created by the Puntites was the Sabaean writing. The earliest inscriptions written in the script were found at Hualti, Ethiopia. These inscriptions are over 3,000 years old. In addition to finding Tahama artifacts that are analogous to C group culture items, we also find that the symbols found in the ancient Semitic writing systems are based on the signs used in the Thinite writing. Here you can see a comparison of Sabian script and the Thinite script below it. If you look carefully at the Sabian signs and the Thinite inscriptions, you will see that they are quite similar. In fact, they are the same. Sabian inscriptions date back to the Diamite kingdom of Ethiopia. The Diamite kingdom dates to around 700 to 300 BC. The first Sabian inscriptions in Yemen only appear much later at the Yemeni Dam site, and they date to only 400 BC. We also find, in a sense, that many of the inscriptions that these people left are also included in the South Arabian inscriptions. The Ethiopians took writing to South Arabia and later India. Both the Emutic and Ethiopic signs are derived from the Sabian writing. The South Arabian scripts are also related to the Thinite inscriptions. Here you can see a picture of the Emutic script, or the South Arabian script. If you look carefully at these signs, you will also note that the South Arabian signs are also related to the Thinite signs, which are posted below. The earliest Sabian inscriptions in Saudi Arabia, such as this inscription from Ma'arib, appear hundreds of years after the Sabian script was already being used by the Ethiopians. It was also used to make the Thermutic writing, and Thermutic was a very popular South Arabian writing that was used in ancient times. We also find, in a sense, that the Sabian inscriptions involved in Tegias. Here's the Gias inscription of Ezana, king of Axum. The Gias writing continues to be used in Ethiopia, and many of the most ancient books of the Ethiopian is written in Gias. As we've noted from this simple preview, this overview of writing in Africa, we find that writing systems derived from Thinite. The Thinite inscriptions were used to write Sabian and even the Phoenician writing of the Phoenician people. These writings from Sabian later evolved into the Mutic, the South Arabian scripts, such as Manaean, Thermutic, and etc., And we also find, in a sense, that Sabian was also used to invent the Giaz script and the Nagari script. The Nagari script is a writing system used in India today and is based on the Ethiopian inscriptions. The Thinite script also was important in the development of the Libico-Berber writing, Proto-Elamite, Vai, the Indus Valley, and Minoan or Linear A writing. In general, we see that ancient writing systems developed in Africa. These ancient writing systems were taken by these African people throughout Africa, on into Saudi Arabia, and further east. The legacy of the writings of these ancient Middle Africans is a legacy which will last for eternity, because it is through these writings, through the Thinite pottery signs, that we had ancient Sumerian, ancient Elamite, the Libico Berber, and also the Indus Valley writing.